Move now once again to redistricting in Virginia. Of course, the referendum for the new maps is up for a vote for everyone in the state on April 21st. Early voting for that is actually open right now, so you can go and you can vote on this. Now, this is something where participation, I think, is critical for those who live here in Virginia. One, because you want your voice to be heard, and this is a local election. Or at least a state election that will have national consequences. It is a premium opportunity if you feel like your voice does not have enough of a say in our political system. This is a grand opportunity for you to go and make that voice heard. A vote in Virginia that will again have national implications. It will have national implications because redistricting has been a domino effect throughout the United States. It began with President Trump imploring Republicans in Texas to go and find him more seats. California has followed as they work on their own redistricting situation, and other states have come henceforth, including Missouri and North Carolina, where they found more wins for the GOP, and it has moved now to Virginia, where Virginia Democrats have looked to redraw the map in order to create more seats for Virginians, all dedicated towards creating an advantage in the House of Representatives at the federal level. So this, a critical election to go and vote yes or no. It is also an election where it's imperative to go and do the research to figure out what yes means and what no means, because there are going to be advertisements, statements, flyers, commercials all throughout this election cycle that maybe could create some misdirection in what a yes vote is for and what a no vote is for. So going and figuring out what your vote will mean is critical. We're going to try to provide as much of that as we can here on 13 News Now leading up to the election. Participation is highly encouraged and education is highly encouraged, and then anyone who wants to make their own decision on this can go and do so from an educated place, from a place of understanding, and go and hopefully have our voices heard right here in Virginia. Be able to participate in the political process in a way that maybe has more impact than other elections that we have seen. April 21st, again, that election day, and early voting is now open. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go through two different I guess one is an interview that was conducted by our own Emily Harrison yesterday. The other is a press conference that was conducted by Virginia Democrats yesterday. So first, we're going to hear from Brian Cannon, a portion of his interview with Emily Harrison. Brian Cannon is a self-described Democrat who is a part of the organization known as No Gerrymandering Virginia. He spoke to Emily Harrison yesterday. Then we'll hear from Michael Fagans, who is a state delegate from the 97th District right here in Virginia Beach. He was at an event yesterday with Governor Ralph Northam, with Don Scott, and with other Virginia officials, and they are going to, I guess from that portion, what we'll hear first is Michael Fagans saying his piece, and then a Q&A with assembled press for Governor Ralph Northam, Delegate Fagans, and others, including Don Scott. So both of those videos will run in succession, and it's going to provide a little bit of scope to this issue and hopefully some understanding and insight as to what this is all about. So let's listen in now to these various assets here as we continue to cover this election that, again, will be held on April 21st. Let's take a listen.
Our organization is a bipartisan organization designed to encourage folks to vote no. I'm personally a Democrat, happy to talk to independents, Democrats, and Republicans about this to say that, look, just because it's happened in California and Texas does not mean we have to gerrymander in Virginia.
Right. So let's, because you guys have a very big talking point, which is that a couple years ago, I believe, Virginia decided that they were going to have this amendment where there was going to be no gerrymandering. I don't believe I was in the state at that point. So can you kind of walk me through what that question was and what Virginians ultimately decided?
Sure. I was fortunate to lead the organization that pushed that from 2015 through 2021. Basically, we tried a lot of different ways to get through the legislature to how could we end partisan and racial and political gerrymandering in Virginia. Ultimately, the legislature passed an amendment, and then once under Republican control, and then the very next year under Democratic control, it has to pass twice in our Constitution. and then it went to the people in November of 2020. And these were all kind of special moments in Virginia's political climate because the pendulum was swinging so quickly. Neither side knew who was going to be in charge. And so they thought better to have fair rules than not. And then in November of 2020, the Virginia voters overwhelmingly approved the amendment with 66% of the vote. So Republicans, Democrats, Independents, a lot of folks turned out. It was one of the highest voted for constitutional amendments ever in Virginia's history, and it ended partisan gerrymandering. And we now have we live under the best maps in the country. And this proposal that the Democrats are putting forward right now would take us from first to worst in terms of how good our maps are.
How does that make you feel as you were a part of that momentum moving forward a few years ago and seeing how quickly it has changed in just the span of a few years? Just personally, how does that make you feel?
Politicians are politicians. I expect nothing less from them, right? They're self-interested and want to make sure their elections are as easy as possible. So when you have a delegate from Northern Virginia drawing his own district for Congress because he really wants to be in Congress, that's not surprising. But I do have faith in Virginia voters that Virginia voters think this is shady, this is sneaky, and this is not the right way to go.
You mentioned Virginia has some of the best maps right now. So if under a perfect world, the maps would stay unchanged, where it's kind of like this 6-5 division right now, if I'm remembering correctly, correct?
Yes, it's 6-5 today. I'm a Democrat. I'll be voting for a Democrat for Congress this November to be a check on Donald Trump. But Democrats don't have to cheat to win. Democrats can win probably 2 or maybe even 3 more seats in Congress from the current fair maps we have. So gerrymandering for an extra 1 or 2 seats is not going to matter. And I'd rather our side not cheat and win fair and square here.
All right, I'm going to talk through some of their points pretty quickly on this just to hear your thoughts, which is that obviously you brought up California, Texas. The whole reason why this is all happening is because they're pointing to Texas saying we have to shore up our defenses because of what's happening in other states. Are you looking at what's happening in Texas and saying, hey, that's fair, or oh, that's not fair? I mean, how does that play into what's going on here? Because a lot of people are nervous.
Yeah, and understandably, I am worried about Donald Trump trying to steal the 2026 elections, and I think we should fight back in every smart and logical way possible. But the gerrymandering in Virginia doesn't meet that criteria. Texas is gerrymandered. They will not get the 5 seats they think. The Latino population is swinging back. California has neutralized that. Utah's Fair Maps Amendment from 2018 actually finally produced a congressional district for Salt Lake City. So they're +1 Democrats. You get 1 more Republican gerrymander in North Carolina, maybe 1 more in Missouri, maybe in Ohio. It doesn't look like Florida is going to be able to go forward, but maybe they do. At the end of the day, though, it looks like it will be a wash. So Trump's big plan to mid-decade gerrymander this country hasn't worked. But what the Democrats are not telling voters in Virginia is important, which is there's about a half a dozen states that have gerrymandered mid-decade, including Texas and California. But then there's a half a dozen that have chosen not to, despite pressure from their national parties. That includes Indiana, that includes South Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, and New Hampshire, as well as Maryland from pressure from the Democrat side. So the question for Virginia is, there's a half a dozen states that have gerrymandered and a half dozen states that haven't. Which part do we want to be in? And I think Virginia voters think this is cheating, and we don't have to cheat to win, and have fair elections in Virginia, and we can choose to be part of the group of states that is not gerrymandering this decade.
Another big talking point about this is the length of time, because we hear a bunch of times it's temporary. It's temporary. It's going to be till, I forget, 2030, I believe is what it was on the amendment. What do you have to say about that it is temporary? Because Republicans are calling this just a flat out lie.
Yeah, Barack Obama told us this was a temporary measure to fight back against Donald Trump. Yet this temporary measure is set to last until January of 2033. So all maps are temporary in that regard, as in they have to be redone for the new census coming up next decade. But these maps are going to last a long time. These maps are going to last for 6 years in Virginia, and Trump is not going to be in office for that long. And so, to the extent that this is fighting back against Trump, if it were really temporary, they would have made it for 2 years, but it is not. And instead, they're gerrymandering for as long as they can get away with it. And it's worth noting in all of this that the Democrats really don't have to cheat to win. The average the party out of power picks up 25 seats on average since in midterms since World War II. That's the UVA Center for Politics has come up with that number in that analysis. And the last time Trump was in office, the Democrats picked up 40 seats just by running good candidates and good election, and good campaigns. So the difference of whether, when the mid-decade gerrymander basically becomes a wash, when Virginia can win fair and square a couple more Democratic seats, it's going to start to look really ridiculous that we did all this contorted gerrymandering in Virginia to squeeze out maybe one more, when the Democrats can be in control of the House by double digits next January.
Are you also concerned about this setting precedent? I know there's a lot of Republicans who say that once these maps are changed so drastically, Democrats or Republicans could get complacent with how they are currently drawn and try and do this again once the time limit is up. Has that been a concern of yours? Have you talked to other people about this?
Yeah, the premise of our democracy is that we have to accept free and fair elections and support people's right to vote, even if they don't vote the way we would want them to. And this erodes that trust because this specifically targets over 40% of our state for voting the wrong way in elections and disenfranchises them. And we just can't have a republic where we continually disenfranchise people.
I swear I'm winding down with my questions. But another big talking point that Republicans seem to have, and I'm just checking to see if this is true or not, like Jen Kiggins, I interviewed her, and she was telling me if the maps go forward as they are currently proposed, that somebody in Williamsburg could be represented by somebody in Northern Virginia. I mean, how true is a statement like this?
Oh, it's sadly true. The way the proposed maps are drawn, it takes tiny slivers out of Northern Virginia and then snakes them all the way down into the rest of Virginia, very deep rural parts of Virginia, and calls that one district. The problem for that is not only that people won't know who actually represents them or where their district is, but it carves up our communities. It doesn't fairly represent us. And the whole point of a representative democracy is that we have our communities get together, we elect a representative, and we send that person to Congress. In this case, they're slicing and dicing our community 7 ways to Sunday, and it's not going to be representative of anything other than what national partisan Democrats want.
Hey, good afternoon, y'all. I'm Delegate Michael Fagans. I probably represent House District 97 within Virginia Beach, but right now I stand before you, not just as a delegate, but also as a veteran who served this country for over 20 years in the United States Air Force. Like the governor said, I also took an oath to defend the Constitution. That oath, it didn't end just when I took off the uniform, because right now, we're really living in what is not known as is not normal times. We've heard it. We've heard it on the news. We've heard it directly from the current president's mouth. These the first words that really the numbers that should come to mind is the numbers 11,780. Those were the numbers that President Trump previously spoke for and asked for to find votes. And that's the type of system we're currently working in right now. This is what we're up against right now. A president who's looking to find votes, who's looking to find seats in other states because he knows his policies, his temperament, how he acts is not popular. We've personally seen the current president call and ask for multiple states to find more seats. That's not how our democracy should work, and we just can't sit by and ignore it. Many have stated that this is not the Virginia way. Well, the new Virginia way is to continue to act up and to stand up, especially against someone who's purposely trying to find ways. I purposely remember voting overseas while I was in the military, and how proud I felt when I was able to vote for Virginia Beach and in the Commonwealth while serving overseas and having my mail-in ballot. And we have an individual who talks about how mail-in ballots shouldn't be utilized while utilizing that same method. I believe he just did it recently yesterday to vote in mail to have a mail-in ballot to vote in, while he's trying to disenfranchise. That's the same method he utilizes, while seeing how other Republican states have been utilizing that for years. I know how special it felt for me to vote overseas and have my ballot counted and have my vote and my voice heard while serving our country. And that's one of the things that makes our country most special. And then now we see a president who's not trying to just put his thumb on a scale. He's just trying to break the whole entire scale in terms of his way. That's why so much that what we're doing right now with Vote Yes is so important. we have to have, we want to make sure that everyone in the Commonwealth understands that the veterans that are standing behind me, the veterans across the Commonwealth, understand the importance of voting yes. You make sure they can vote now up until April 21st. And we want to make sure that there's a lot of misinformation out there. But one of the most important things we want people to know is that this is temporary, and the voters ultimately get to decide what happens. If when we win on April 21st, the constitutional referendum will go forward. If the voters decide not, that's what they've decided. But we're letting the voters decide. And that's one of the most important parts about this constitutional referendum. Just like our other constitutional referendums, the voters ultimately decide. Unfortunately, the other side does not want the voters to have a voice. And they're going to continue to try to disenfranchise. And we're just making sure to let everyone know that veterans want to support, vote yes. We understand what it means to serve. We understand how important it is to protect democracy. That the times we're in right now, that we just can't stand by. So I'm calling for all my fellow veterans, all my military family members to stand up, to make sure that they speak out, and to make sure to vote yes.
All right, Marcus is right here.
You just mentioned, Mr. Speaker, early voting is already underway. First numbers show that Republican-leaning areas are showing much higher turnout, some up to 15% and more, while some of the Democratic areas like Fairfax have 5% or under 5%. Are you concerned?
Not at all. I'm looking at the numbers. I'm glad you asked that question. You're smart, Alec. On my way here, I just looked at the vote tallies right now. If you look at our voter scores right now, last cycle in 2025 at the same point of early voting, we were about 60-40 voter profiles. If you look at VPAP, you can see it's 60-40. Right now, it's like 59-41. We good. I feel very good about this election. I feel like where it's going, we're going to win. And all of the hand-wringing and pearl clutching will be to no avail. We're going to send a message around this country that Virginia truly is for lovers. We're going to save the country that we love, and we're going to win this election.
I have a question for the former governor.
Yeah.
And today, former Governor Glenn Youngkin retweeted current Governor Abigail Spanberger's tweet calling it, quote, blatant lies about voting yes. He didn't specifically say what was the blatant lie, but I think it had to do with the temporary basis on this. A lot of Republicans are afraid that this will carry over beyond 2030. What kind of reassurances can you offer? Because once precedent is set, it can be kind of hard to roll back.
Yeah, I can't speak for Governor Youngkin, but what I can speak to, this started, as Susan said, in North Carolina. It happened in Texas. You know, when it happened, the people like Governor Youngkin and Republicans, congressional members in Virginia, I didn't hear a word from them.
Quiet.
They said, not a peep, crickets, as we say. And now that we're just trying to level the playing field, letting the voters in Virginia choose how to move forward, well, they're upset about it and saying all these things, a lot of rhetoric that is a bunch of static in my mind. But where were they? And this is the greatest example of hypocrisy that I can even imagine. So if you didn't like what happened in North Carolina and Missouri and Texas, what's the deal here? So you can't have it both ways. And as I said in my comments, we have always prided ourselves in Virginia on having fair and accurate and reliable elections. And we have always accepted the winners and losers. We've always accepted and supported the peaceful transition of power. That's who we are as Virginians. And what we're doing with this referendum, we're just leveling the playing field. You know, if they're going to do like this, we've got to stand up as Virginians and say, this isn't right. This is an attack on democracy. These are individuals out there, including our president, who doesn't want to lose his parking spot, and we're going to put an end to it and level the playing field in Virginia.
One more from me
Sure.
on this finally, because I did also speak to no gerrymandering Virginia, which they said that's all well and good, but Prop 50 in California, that would have technically have leveled the playing field. They say that this is the power grab to extend it further. Anything that you would say?
This is true. No, that's not accurate. And this is all about just doing what we need to do in Virginia to counter what's going on in the rest of the country. I mean, the president, you all have seen it on the TV. You've seen what comes out of his mouth. He's doing this to maintain his power and to maintain the power of the mega Republicans, and that's what it's all about. And we in Virginia here don't agree with that. We believe in our Constitution, we believe in democracy, and we're going to level the playing field.
And the voters are deciding. That's the biggest part of this. The voters get to decide what happens. If the voters vote no, we will take that. We are supportive of vote yes. We believe that's what's happening right now in this country. Just is not the moment for us to stand by. We are asking everyone to go out and vote yes. And when we are victorious on April 21st, we will then inspire the rest of this country to show that we are pushing back from someone who is trying to break the scale and trying to tilt elections to in this way.
I think if you look at all of the states that redistricted without asking their voters, which are Republican-led states, and you look at the Democratic states that California's passed theirs, and we are asking voters the same way California did, you will see that this is not just leveling the field.
All right, Brett, you got one?
Yeah, I thank y'all for fielding some questions here. So, the process for getting this on the ballot, obviously in time for the midterm elections, is the goal. Obviously, there's been legal challenges along the way. There's PACs that are forming to put out all kinds of different messaging. And some would say that it's intended to confuse voters. So you have some voters who are going to the polls. And then in addition to that, there's been some delays in the state Department of Elections getting out information ahead of time. So that said, I understand that when voters are hitting the polls and actually voting in their ballot, there's no maps that are shown in there. So what would you say about how informed voters are on this? Do you fear that there is confusion just amidst all of this process, and just the fact that we're all sort of generally overwhelmed?
Virginia voters are smart. We're so different than every other state because we do have so many elections. I trust the voters. I know they'll figure it out. They're going to get the right information and they're going to make the right choice. All of that other stuff is all smoke screens. The court stuff, the confusion that the opponents know that their messaging is so bad. The politics are so bad. Donald Trump's policies are so bad. He can't run on his record. So he has to try to confuse voters. Voters are going to figure it out. They don't like to be played, and he's going to find out he just took a 15-point ass whoop in the last election. He's going to take another one this cycle because voters are going to figure it out. And when they figure it out, it's not going to be good for the Republicans. The last thing Republicans want to see right now is an informed Virginia voter, because when they know what happened, they lose.
Do y'all have any comment on just when voters are hitting the polls and they're reading this question and it's framed as, to restore fairness in elections, but then there's no accompanying map? And, of course, you would assume that a voter would research this before hitting the polls. We know that doesn't always happen. So can you speak to just the lack of that information when voters are hitting the polls?
That's the process that's always happened. Voters, they get some language. We have to put language for them to vote on. We don't put a picture up so they can color it. They can go and see what the maps look like if they so choose. But the language is important. We want to make sure that we create a system that is fair to respond. That's what the words say, to respond to the unprecedented attack on democracy from Donald Trump. All of this happened because of Donald Trump. That's why it's so, as the governor said, it's so hypocritical for Republicans. They didn't say a word when Texas did it. They didn't say a word when North Carolina did it. They didn't say a word when Missouri did it. But as soon as we respond, now Virginia Republicans, oh my God, what are you doing? So miss us with that fake hypocrisy, that fake bedwetting, and make sure that we get our voters out to come out and vote yes. And that's what will happen. And you'll see, you'll be writing a story about how we won this election big. Yes.
And from the House side, I know many of us in the House of Delegates and our Senate companions as well, we're out in our communities right now having town halls. We're going to have a few town halls just within my district, within House District 97. There's been town halls specific with other groups, for example, the NAACP. There's been lots of groups that have been talking about this for weeks and months as this process is going on. We're going to continue to go out there and educate the voters as much as possible and let them know about the reasons why. This is one of the reasons why we're out here today on this beautiful day in Norfolk, to make sure that we're letting voters know about the reason why to vote yes. It is about the unconstitutional power grab we're seeing from Trump across this country, and it's time for, and we want our Virginia voters to go out and vote yes, because they're ultimately going to be the ones that decide what happens.
Okay, last question, Brett.
Speaker Scott, you're chief of staff. The referendum committee that he started, $33 million. 98% of that, according to VPAP, been raised out of state. It brings some saying, why is so much outside influence in this? What's your response to that?
I mean, I think Virginia is a leader in not only the country, but in the world. I think there is a lot of interest in what happens to Virginia. So goes Virginia, so goes the country. And so it's not surprising to me that a lot of folks would be engaged. I think you may have some information wrong about my chief of staff. He's not that good. I wish he could raise me $33 million. But
So he's on the paperwork of that
yeah,
referendum.
yeah. But I think we're in a good place in Virginia. And I think a lot of concerns. I mean, we're fighting back against a national Republican power grab that we've never seen. I just left D.C. and literally I'm walking down the street and the Department of Justice has a huge flag with a picture of Donald Trump waving in the wind with that scowl on his face. Well, in Virginia, we don't like that scowl, and you're about to find out on April 21st.
And I have just one follow-up real quick. I spoke to a voter who said, I want to vote yes, but why did they have to, lives in Yorktown, why did they have to take us all the way up to Northern Virginia? Was there no other way to make us more competitive, to make it more compact, that we can have a representative that I know will be in my area?
We're not going to relitigate how the maps were drawn. It was a consensus basis to get maps drawn, but that's not the issue now. The issue right now is not about the maps. It's about the person who is abusing his authority with no check, no accountability. Congress will not stand up to Donald Trump, and we need some people in Congress who will. Simple as.
Okay, so there you go. We're hearing from a number of different voices today when it comes to the redistricting map that is going to be voted on by Virginians on April 21st. Again, in that first clip, the interview with Emily Harrison, one of our reporters here at 13 News Now, you heard from Brian Cannon from No Gerrymandering Virginia. And then we heard from Michael Fagans, a state delegate from right here in Virginia Beach. And then you heard from Fagans, Don Scott, Governor Ralph Northam, and others as they took questions from the press that was gathered. So this is something we're going to continue to cover for the next just less than a month here now, as we want to make sure that everyone who can go to the polls does go to the polls, and everyone who does go to the polls is completely educated so they know both sides of this issue and then can make the best decision for them. So April 21st, we're going to keep hammering that day. April 21st is the vote on these maps, and early voting has already begun. So if you'd like to vote now, you can go ahead and do so, but I strongly encourage everyone to go and dig into this issue, get below the surface, and learn more about what's going on, what this will impact, where it started, why it started, and how it has made its way to Virginia. All of that is critical in making this decision that could potentially have national consequences in the House of Representatives in Congress.